Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the College Sports Hive. That is Leif and I am Scott Stevens, and we're back with you on this Monday to bring you some college basketball action. We'll have our results from last week in the games that we picked. We'll do a quick recap on the Gonzaga Iowa game that took place. Was a great one there. We'll give our player performances, team performances, our updated top fives, all that good stuff, as well as some news, some changes to the AP rankings, and then our previews for. We have two previews for you for this week, and then we'll pick. It's not quite an Elite Eight. I think we're at 15 or so games that we're going to pick for y'all. The good matchups this weekend, but we're just trying to limit some of these to just one preview episode a week. So with that being said, we'll jump into the results from last week. I had another good week going with 7-1. You went 6-2, Leaf, so not too bad either. We're sitting at 28-12 overall for me and 26-14 for you. So hot starts for both.
Yeah, I mean the Rutgers game, Rutgers Illinois was a nail biter down the stretch, and that was the one that we were different on, and so good call on Rutgers, and I think that segues us pretty well into our team of the week at least part if you want to do that. I know it's jumping the gun a little bit, but I'm excited to talk about this Rutgers team.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Yeah, so I had Northwestern and Rutgers were my two. And Northwestern, just because they upset Michigan State and then no one saw it coming, and I wanted to give a little consolation prize. But Rutgers, I was all in. I watched them play Maryland on Monday of last week, and Rutgers looked awesome. They struggled in the first half, came out in the second half, and won the half by 15 points. Had the exact same result against Illinois, a really good Illinois team that we've talked about numerous times on this show. And they came out, they were down in the first half. Second half, they were clearly the better team, and they were winning handily. And then Illinois made a really nice comeback, made it a really close game. And Ron Harper Jr. is legit. And so, yeah, I had Rutgers and Northwestern as my two teams of the week. Couldn't really decide, and I'll let you go with Northwestern because I see that was your team as well.
Yeah, it's a little cheap to copy you on this one, but it was definitely the most impressive thing to happen all week was that win over Michigan State. My runner-up was Gonzaga, just with that big win over Iowa, and I know it was a little bit more dominant, but with that being said, you have to award that sometimes as well, and just looking good is something that you want to do in that marquee of a matchup as well between the number one team and the number three team. Just hard not to give some shout out and some love there to Gonzaga as well, even though they're probably one of the more, you could probably give it to them every single week, but yeah, so good stuff there from Northwestern and Gonzaga. And while we're here, just you touched on Ron Harper Jr., and I see he's your performance of the week individually. Talk to us about what he did this weekend, and yeah.
Yeah, Ron Harper Jr. made me look good. I put him first team All Big Ten in our Big Ten preview, and he backed it up with 27 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, and 5 threes against Maryland, and then 28 points, 9 rebounds, and 5 threes against Illinois, including some really clutch baskets and free throws down the stretch. He looked awesome. He was the best player on the court, and that included Ayo Dosunmu. And I think that their DNA of Rutgers is playing super tough defense, and they were able to win a game in which they had to score 91 points. And his ability to score on offense is what separates this team from in past years. And he's an elite player, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's an All-American when it's all said and done. He's been that good so far in my eyes.
Yeah, he's been tremendous as well, and a performance that stood out to me, and I'll go with is from that Northwestern team that sprung that upset in that game over Michigan State. Northwestern guard Boo Buie had 30 points, 4 assists, and 3 rebounds in 24 minutes of action in that win over Michigan State. So shout out to him, a huge performance to help lift the Wildcats over the Spartans there. Just one of the biggest upsets so far this year in the landscape of not only college basketball but the Big Ten for sure. So great performances for all of those people mentioned, and let's backtrack now and get into our top fives. Let's hear yours first and your reasoning as to where you place the teams.
Yeah, so I've got Gonzaga. I put Baylor based off a little bit, and then they both went on pause. So I've got Gonzaga reclaiming their top spot. They just look phenomenal, and they just have these pieces that not everyone has to play their best game. And if one player plays really well and 3 play decently, they're still going to win. And I don't think they played their best game against Iowa, and they were up 20 and handily up for almost the entire game against the number 3 team in the country. If that doesn't warrant a 1 spot, I don't know what does. Number 2 is Baylor, and they have been dominant again. They killed Kansas State, which Kansas State is not good at all, but I mean, it was closer to 200 points than the 31 it ended up to. And then I think those two are in a class of their own so far. I think once you hit number 3, it's a different distinction. But I've got number 3. I've got Kansas, and I've been harsh on Kansas. I've said that they've squeaked out too many games, and they don't have as talented a roster as they typically do. But Bill Self, there's something about winning that Bill Self and the Jayhawks know how to do, and they win in these scrappy games. And there's like, sometimes when you win it, when you're not playing your best, that's a testament of a really tough and good team. So I got Kansas number 3. I got Villanova number 4. They had a week with 2 about 20-point victories over St. John's, and I'm forgetting the second one they played, but they played really well in this week. Jeremiah Robinson Earl and Colin Gillespie are really good players, and they're going to lead that way. And then Villanova is always going to get better as the year goes on under Jay Wright. And 5th, I've got the Iowa Hawkeyes. I think that this loss, it shouldn't really hurt them too much because Gonzaga is just such a juggernaut and in a class of their own almost. So I'm happy with that top 5. And then I got number 6 that I'm not putting them in yet, but I think they're really close. They're on the precipice, and that's Tennessee. They had COVID issues at the start of the year, and they've looked really good coming through it and playing fewer games, looking just as good as some of these teams that are up ahead of them.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with you. Gonzaga and Baylor are definitely a class in their own right of just the class of the NCAA so far. I actually still have Iowa at number 3, and I know that's going to be a little bit disheartening to some people, but I just think there's still a lot to say of not having your best performance and just how good Gonzaga is. I think that was just a big testament on truly how good they are and I definitely don't think Iowa played their best game in that one for sure. And then like you have Kansas at 3, I have them closely following Iowa at number 4. I went back and forth on who was going to put 3 and 4, but I don't really want to dock Iowa too much for losing the number 1 team in the country, even though it could have been a little bit more pretty. They could have played better. But with that being said, I think the same thing could be said about Kansas and all of their big wins so far. They haven't necessarily been pretty, and they could have played better. So with that being said, I'll leave Kansas down at 4 for this week, and then you touched on 2 big wins for Villanova. They're only going to get better. They're my 5th team to round out the top 5. So Gonzaga, Baylor, Iowa, Kansas, and Nova. Yeah, so those are our top 5s, our performances of the week, both team and individual. Let's get into some news, and no better place to update you than some good news on Keontae Johnson, star from Florida. We talked about he collapsed on the court last week. He's out of his coma and he's speaking. He delivered a heartfelt message thanking all the fans and people of Gator Nation. What do you make of all this and this good news for Keontae?
It's just such great news because that's such a scary incident, and I know when I watched it, I watched it because curiosity got the better of me, and the weirdest part for me was I turned on that game. I was like, man, this is the longest commercial on the planet, and I missed a little bit, and I was like, man, and then I turned it on, and it was like, where's Keontae Johnson? Because I wanted to watch the matchup between Keontae Johnson and Scotty Barnes. I hear about it. I end up watching that video, and I was just really scared for him. I was like, I let my brain race, and I was like, oh man, this is horrible. I'm just so happy he's doing well enough to thank his fans, talk, and give heartening messages to his family, friends, and teammates. And I think Florida's doing the right thing of not playing basketball for a little bit and just celebrating that he's doing all right. So that was the best news that I got this week. I was searching it every hour, and when I finally got the update and I saw that video, I was really happy, and I think everyone is.
Yeah, absolutely. Just super good to hear him address Gator Nation and all of those things, and thanking people for their thoughts, prayers, things like that. Just really, really touching to see him kind of start to be himself a little bit once again. And so just a terrifying situation that hopefully he's past and on the other side of. Some not so good news for the University of Kentucky and their basketball team. They've actually now fallen to 1-5 on their year. What's happening down there in Kentucky?
I think they've played some good teams, and they're just super young. They have 0 players that have played in their program before that have actually played in the games because their only returner is Keon Brooks, and he hasn't played yet due to injury. But the biggest news there is Coach Calipari asked Cameron Fletcher, a freshman for the program, to step away from the program. It seems like it's a temporary thing based off what I read into, but here's the quote that Coach Calipari had. "We have asked Cam Fletcher to take some time and step away from the team. he needs to reflect and do some soul searching to get his priorities in order. Any attitude or actions that are detrimental to this team will not be tolerated, and that goes for everyone on the team. And he went on to say that he's been there 11 years and that he's never had to do this. And he's conducted the team in such an order that everyone should know the expectations. And he believes that Cam Fletcher will operate under those in the future. I think basically what happened, it wasn't anything like misconduct or anything detrimental into humans or anything of that sort. It was just on the sidelines. He got really mad, just passion for the game. And since Cam Fletcher has issued an apology and said as much, he said, he just got really passionate, was frustrated, thought he could do more to help the team. And in its hard times, I think his tempers got the best of him in a difficult game against North Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. Some interesting news here coming out of Kentucky. Just programs in a rough spot right now, starting off 1-5. I think I saw a stat that this is the first time they've fallen to 1-5 in some 94 years, which is super impressively bad to start your season and not a great way for that program. So we've touched on this a couple times. We do think they'll start to come around. They'll start to play a little bit better down the stretch. I'm not necessarily sure that this is something you can necessarily bounce back completely from. But with that being said, I just think this is a huge moment for Coach Calipari and what he's doing there at Kentucky. And I just think I think there's a lot of steps that they're going to make, and this is a huge one to kind of teaching moment to this young kid to say, listen, we're better than this, and you are part of the reason why these bad things are happening. So you got to get yourself right. And so I think that's a huge thing for him to do. And it definitely wasn't an easy situation all the way around, I'm sure. Probably an easier decision for Memphis was they extended head coach Penny Hardaway for 5 more years. What do you make of this move?
I think it's a good move because their program's back on the rise. Actually, since Calipari left, they had a little hole to fill, and now Penny filled in and started recruiting very well. They've gotten a few 5-stars in back-to-back years, and hasn't necessarily translated on the court yet. But I think he's building the culture, and he's deserving of this. And so I'm happy for them, and I'm excited to see what this Memphis program becomes.
Northwestern, like we touched on, did stun number 4 Michigan State in an upset win in the Big Ten. What do you make of that upset and what happened there, and some comments made by head coach Tom Izzo?
Yeah, I mean, first off, Northwestern played a great game, and I think Michigan State just came out flat, and anyone can beat anyone. I mean, this is something I've been told my whole life, and just watching sports is like on any given day, anyone can beat anyone, and that's what happened to Michigan State. And this Northwestern team is better than I think we both thought. And Tom Izzo was frustrated with his team. He said it was one of the most inept performances that he's seen in his 26 years at Michigan State. I think he's just lighting a fire under his team's butt. I don't think he was calling out anyone in particular, saying this team is bad or anything like that. I think he just wants to get his team motivated and play their best ball moving forwards. And they have a big matchup with Wisconsin coming up that we'll touch on in the preview. But I don't think there's anything too malicious in saying they're inept.
Absolutely. Head coach for Pittsburgh, Jeff Capel, has tested positive for COVID-19, as well as the Syracuse Notre Dame game has been postponed due to players on the Buffalo team, which was Syracuse's last opponent, have tested positive. So some COVID-19 news as always to fill you in on and updates happening there. But let's get to the new rankings. We have a new top 10. Not necessarily new, but some of the same names, but in a little bit different order. Number 1 is Gonzaga. Number 2, Baylor. 3, Kansas. 4, Iowa. 5, Villanova. 6 is your Houston team, sitting right there on the fringe of the top 5. 7, West Virginia. 8, Tennessee. 9, Wisconsin, and then 10, Texas. What do you make of this top 10?
I think a lot of these teams have really separated themselves in terms of just how well they've played in a lot of games where they face competition. I think that you've started to see the teams being weeded out. I think one team that we talked about being close to the top 10 but not quite was Creighton, and they've fallen out. And I think these kind of top 10 teams are going to stick around for a while longer. And they may be some fluctuation, and I expect Michigan State to sneak back in and maybe a Virginia team or a Florida State team from the ACC. But these are 10 of the best 10, 15 teams in the country. And so I'm happy with it, and I thought the top 5 were the exact same we put in, just slightly different orders, and I think they have been the 5 best teams of basketball so far.
Yeah, I would agree with that for sure. Two biggest movers, both up and down, are both in the Big Ten. Rutgers has moved up 8 spots from number 19 to number 11 after a few good wins this week, and then Michigan State actually fell 8 spots from number 4 to number 12 after that loss to Northwestern. Any surprises there?
No, I think both are appropriate, and I was really happy to see the Rutgers team move up that high from 19 to 11. I was thinking they might even crack top 10 because they looked really good in both second halves, and I think they're really well coached. So I was happy to see them be ranked that high. And then Michigan State, I think that was a harsh but needed wake up call for the team because they were not playing well in games against smaller opponents. Like they struggled against a Detroit team, and so they got blown out against Northwestern, frankly. And I think this was an appropriate move. Excuse me.
You're all good. Yeah, I would agree with you. I think both of them make sense to me as well. And with that being said, we'll start to recap the main game that we previewed for you last weekend, and that was between number 1 Gonzaga and at the time number 3 Iowa. Gonzaga was able to win the game by a score of 99-88. Luka Garza had a great performance. He had 30 points, 10 rebounds, 2 assists, but that was about it for the Iowa Hawkeyes in their standout performances. They didn't necessarily get the production that they needed out of the rest of the team to kind of stand by with this juggernaut that is Gonzaga.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's kind of my big take on the game is that to compete in this game, we said that Iowa's best when their players outside of Luka Garza have good games, and only one did, and that was Joe Wieskamp, and he played a great game. He's had 20 points, 9 rebounds, and Luka Garza had an uber-efficient 30-point game. But against a team like Gonzaga that's going to score, no matter how good your defense is, Gonzaga is going to score. They needed more production from, in specific, Jordan Bohannon and C.J. Frederick, and neither of them provided any punch. And I think that was the difference in the game, just because they didn't have as many possessions as Gonzaga, which is almost instant doom on the rebounds, but also they shot 18% from 3, and Iowa was one of the better shooting teams in the country. So I think this was a game that they had to play close to perfectly in order to win, and maybe they still even wouldn't because Gonzaga is that good. But they just didn't play their best game, and I think it was misrepresentational of the score of 11 points because Gonzaga, I think, could have won by 20 in this game.
Yeah, Wieskamp having another good performance for Iowa. Let's not discredit him. He had 20 points and 9 rebounds, so a good game for him as well. But with that being said, talk about Jalen Suggs and his efforts in this one.
Suggs was phenomenal. He came in and we talked about how it might behoove Gonzaga to have that break, just let him get healthy. And he looked healthy. He was the most explosive player on the floor by a mile. His speed was on display. He made some nice plays in transition. He had an amazing block and a 1-on-2. There was a 2-on-1 go for Iowa, and he blocked C.J. Frederick's layup. And you don't really see many point guards doing that. And then he shot 7 of 10 from 3, and that was considered one of his like make or break, or like what a lot of draft people call swing skills. And he shot 70% for 3 against the number 3 team in the nation, along with his explosiveness and passing ability. So, I mean, just a phenomenal performance from Suggs. And then Joel Ayayi had 18 rebounds as like the 4th best player on the Gonzaga team, you'd probably say. And to have 18 rebounds as a shooting guard, he's just like an unheralded guy. And that if you can get that type of production from a guy who is unheralded, you're going to be an elite team, especially with the top 3 they have above him. So I was just impressed with Gonzaga. They came out and they looked a tiny bit rusty for about 3 minutes. And they were just going back and forth trading buckets, and they just built this lead and sustained it the entire way. So I was just super impressed. They're a really fun team to watch, and it's must-see TV whenever they play.
I would definitely agree with you. Do you think Iowa's defense was fully exposed in this one, or do you think it was more along the lines of Gonzaga's just that explosive on offense? And do you think if the case is that Iowa's defense was super exposed, do you think Gonzaga put a lot on tape that could be used by Big Ten teams for them on stretch to get Iowa in trouble later on?
I think the answer is both, and it's twofold. I think it's both that Gonzaga is that good because not a lot of teams can do what Gonzaga did, but they will try to emulate. And I think there were things that were exposed for Iowa, such as when they played a zone, they were able to hit Drew Timme in the middle and then pass out of it because Iowa collapsed, or they'd shoot the little 12-footer. And I think that those are things that happen in zones, but Iowa's zone in particular didn't look very good, maybe because they were concerned about Gonzaga's shooting ability, and rightfully so. But I just don't think a lot of teams have the capacity to do what Gonzaga did. And there will be games, I think, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Illinois, Rutgers, some of the elite, the upper echelon, and even some of the lower teams in the Big Ten, just because it's so deep, will be able to emulate aspects of what Gonzaga's approach was. I just don't think many teams have 4 players that as offensively gifted as Gonzaga. So Iowa should fare okay, and they were able to put up 88 points on a pretty good defensive team in Gonzaga as well. So I think their offense will outweigh their defensive concerns, but there are things to tidy up, and I'm sure Fran McCaffrey and his group are working on those as they enter Big Ten play.
Absolutely. This is a huge win for Gonzaga, number 1 team in the country, winning 99-88 over number 3 at the time, Iowa. Tremendous performance for Gonzaga in this one, and I think they're definitely, like you touched on, just a complete juggernaut moving on and moving forward in the rest of the season. This is a huge test that they passed with flying colors. With that being said, 2 more huge tests for a couple different programs that we have in our previews for you this week. And let's start things off as a game tomorrow night that's going to take place at 9 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN2. Number 7, West Virginia, traveling to number 3, Kansas. FPI is giving Kansas a 65% chance to win. What do you make of that stat first off?
I'd say it's a little high, but I mean, Kansas doesn't really lose in Fog Allen Fieldhouse. So there's a chance. However, there aren't fans, and that's one of the best, if not the best, home court advantages in college basketball. I think they deserve, based on their track record alone and how they played even this season, to have a slight advantage. I just feel like 65 is a little drastic in my eyes because West Virginia has been a top 10 team all year as well. This will be a really fun matchup, and I think it's going to be a defensive battle.
Yeah, West Virginia is ranked 7th, and Kansas is ranked 8th, respectively, in the KenPom rankings. What do you think is going to make the difference in this one, and what's gonna stand out to you as who's going to be able to have the biggest advantage?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I say this every time we talk about West Virginia is can the opponent of West Virginia rebound well enough against the West Virginia bigs? And it's the same idea with North Carolina. They just put so much pressure on you to clear your glass and make them only have one shot. And then conversely, Kansas doesn't score amazingly, and West Virginia defends very well. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, Kansas defends excellently, and West Virginia needs to hit outside shots, which is something I always talk about when West Virginia is on the docket. And they've been doing it recently, but can they do that against a team in Kansas that's been phenomenal defending the perimeter? So those are my big things. Can you hit shots, and can you keep West Virginia off the glass? And I think it's going to be somewhere in between, and that's why this is a true toss-up in my eyes.
Who do you think has the advantage shooting in this one? You said it's a huge issue. It's a huge component of the game. I know West Virginia is really the way they make their money. If they don't shoot well, they usually have a little bit more subpar offensive performances. Do you think that kind of leans towards Kansas or more towards West Virginia?
I think they're shooting better than they have in years past when they've had these 2 big lineups. But I'd say the shooting advantage, and frankly from the perimeter, is in favor of Kansas, but it's a narrow edge. It's not big enough to sway me towards Kansas heavily, just because I think David McCormick hasn't played very well this season, and Kansas' best chance in my eyes is playing 5-out offense and playing small ball and hoping you can shoot well enough to shoot West Virginia out of playing their 2 big lineup, because something's got to give. Either Kansas is going to have to play a big, or 2, or West Virginia is going to have to take out one of their bigs because of the shooting ability of Kansas. So it's a game of cat and mouse, and Bill Self and Bob Huggins are phenomenal coaches. I know I say that about a lot of coaches, but I've stayed consistent about those. At some point, I'll give you a coaching ranking. I promise that one. But those 2 would definitely be in my top 10, and I'm curious to see the cat and mouse game here, especially without the fans that Kansas usually can get some cheap wins with just from their fans, and if they're close games. And I'm very curious to see how much Oscar Tshiebwe and Derek Culver, play together against a Kansas team that'll more than likely play a 5-out offense with their biggest guy being about 6'7". So that's something to keep your eyes on, and be interesting to see the coaching matchup there.
We know you're all about your individual matchups, and you got one highlighted here on the docket. Let's hear it. What's this individual matchup that's going to make the difference in this one?
I think it's Marcus Garrett and Miles McBride. They're both phenomenal defenders, and Miles McBride brings a bit more offensively. But I'd say Marcus Garrett is the best perimeter defender in the nation. So I'm curious if Marcus Garrett can make Miles McBride struggle scoring the ball. If so, advantage Kansas in my eyes, because his game is defensively oriented and facilitating, whereas McBride makes West Virginia at their best when he's shooting efficiently, as he has all season, and that's what's elevated them. But that's a difficult matchup for him, and I'm curious to see who prevails in that individual matchup, and I'd assume the winner of that individual matchup wins the game.
It's going to be a great one on ESPN2 for you at 9 p.m. Eastern tomorrow night. Number 7 West Virginia against number 3 Kansas. Any final thoughts before we move on to our second preview?
I think one of Ochai Agbaji, Jalen Wilson, and Christian Brown needs to score really well in this game for Kansas to have a chance. Maybe 2, because West Virginia, is going to give you a great defensive pressure, and you have to hit some shots. Not necessarily sets necessarily won't work.
It's going to be a good one for sure. And another good one that's going to take place actually on Christmas Day is number 9 Wisconsin traveling to number 12 Michigan State, 12:30 Eastern time. There for this tremendous Big Ten matchup. 2 of the better teams that we've touched on in our Big Ten preview for all of you, that these teams are so evenly matched in some of these things. And I think just to put this into perspective is that Michigan State only has a 51% chance to be the FPI, basically a dead even split on who's going to win this game between these two schools. What do you make of this matchup just off the cuff right away?
Yeah, it comes down to who wins the front court battle in my eyes. Wisconsin plays 2 bigs. They tend to really do well on the offensive glass, and Michigan State also plays 2 bigs and does really well in the defensive glass. And I think that's one thing that'll be interesting to see as it goes along, especially as Michigan State has great depth in terms of numbers, and Wisconsin has great depth in terms of quality. They play 7 guys really heavily, and Michigan State plays 10 or 12. And I'm curious to see which prevails, quality or quantity, and the mixture of that. And those are 2 things in my eyes to look for.
We've talked about this in the preview for the entire Big Ten conference that we did for all of you. What do you think the depth, and not only the depth in terms, because we talked about that these 2 teams are both probably the 2 of the deeper teams in the Big Ten. But when you talked about Wisconsin, you said they're not only deep, but they're also very experienced as well. And talk to me about that, traveling to Michigan State. I know there's not going to be probably fans in that arena there, but it's still going onto the road in unfamiliar territory and a huge game, top 15 matchup. And these games are massive in the landscape of the Big Ten, like we touched on, for seeding ranks and things like that. So talk to me about that experience and how this can propel that Wisconsin team.
Yeah, I think that they are probably the most mature and talented team. Like, the combination of maturity and talent is for Wisconsin probably the best in the country. They start 5 seniors who have all started or played over 20 minutes a game in 2 seasons, the better part of 2 seasons prior to this one. So they've got great continuity, and I think that they had their hiccup already against Marquette, and then I don't think they'll be phased traveling to the Breslin Center. Obviously, with fans, that could be a different story, but they've been there. They've played in tough arenas. They actually last year were 6-6 in the Big Ten, had their best player at the time transfer, and then ended up winning 8 in a row to win the Big Ten. So I think that they've faced all the adversity that they can, and they're ready to play. And Michigan State is experienced as well. But I just don't think that all of their pieces have experience in the same spotlight as Wisconsin, because they were so reliant on Cassius Winston and Xavier Tillman in years past, that a lot of these new guys are finding new roles. Even though they've played games, they just haven't played games in their expected role this season. And it's advantageous to Wisconsin, in my opinion.
We talked about that loss with Michigan State in terms of being upset by Northwestern. How do you think this kind of motivates this Spartans team in going into this super big matchup? I think that's just one of those things where we talked about it in the Big Ten preview as well, is any of those teams in the depth pieces of the Big Ten can come up and bite you in the ankle at any given point. And I think, honestly, it could just be one of those things that really sets them and gets them just that much more hyper-focused for the remainder of their Big Ten schedule. Do you think that could be something that plays out in the court in this matchup between these 2 schools?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if I'm Greg Gard, coach of Wisconsin, I'm frustrated that they lost to Northwestern, because Tom Izzo is not going to want to go 0-2 to start Big Ten play, and that you're going to get their best shot. Not that you wouldn't anyway, but it's just an added bonus of, we don't want to start 0-2. We don't want to dig ourselves a hole and then get out of, and it's going to add fire to an already really talented team. So I definitely expect the best from Michigan State. They're going to give them their best punch. They won't be complacent and walk through this one. I don't think they would have anyway because Wisconsin's very good, but they certainly won't be sleepwalking early in that game. And I'm sure Tom Izzo is going to be scheming up a storm in anticipation of this game.
Any individual matchup that stands out to you in this one?
I've got a few that like I'm not set on. This determines the game, but one that I think will be interesting to see how the big guys of Wisconsin are stretched if they play Malik Hall and Joey Hauser, because they typically like to have both in the paint on defense to protect the rim. So I think that'll be interesting if Hauser and Hall are the starting bigs, because I think there's been some rumblings that Thomas Kithier is going to come off the bench now. And then Rocket Watts and Dimitri Trice are really good basketball players, and those are the two guys I thought would be battling it out for second team All Big Ten as a point guard. So that's a great individual matchup, and I'm not sure what to make of it, really. I think Dimitri Trice has more experience playing the point guard, and that may favor Wisconsin as well. This game I think it's just the battle of depth, to be honest. It's a team aspect. There's no individual matchup that I think is like, if they win, there's absolutely going to win the game. Whereas in some other ones, I feel that way.
Absolutely. It's going to be just a tremendous top 15 matchup, huge in the landscape of the Big Ten in this one, between number 9, Wisconsin, and number 12, Michigan State. Christmas Day, 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Like we touched on, pretty much a dead even split, 50-50 in the FPI, who's got the chance to win that one. So tune in and be sure to see this great display of Big Ten basketball. With that being said, we'll move on to our Sweet 16, Sweet 15-ish, however many games we have on the docket. I think one was postponed already. So I think we're down to 15 teams, correct? 15
yeah,
games.
Had a Sweet 16 ready. I went for a run, came back, and saw one was postponed. So we're at 15. We can add one in if we want, but I think 15 is probably good enough for you guys to track.
15 will do for sure. So why not jump right in? We have 15 of these to pick. Let's do Purdue at Iowa, Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Who you got in this one? I see there's big TBD.
I had Purdue to start. I had this weird hunch that Purdue would play a brand of basketball that would trouble Iowa. I just think that I've changed. I think I'm going to amend that and put Iowa, just because I believe that Iowa's not going to lose 2 in a row. And I think that they've got Luka Garza, who's the best player in college basketball. He may not be the most dynamic, won't be the top draft pick, but he's the most productive player in college basketball. And I just don't think that they're going to shoot as poorly as they did 2 games in a row. That said, I think Purdue plays a brand of basketball that could really trouble Iowa. They're really good at rebounding, and they play a lot of good depth. They play 10 players over 13 minutes a game, and Purdue's been a pleasant surprise so far in the Big Ten. So I expect this to be a really close game and a little misleading, considering Iowa's a top 5 team and Purdue is unranked. So I was extremely close to taking Purdue, but I think I'm going to go with Iowa.
Yeah, I'm going to go Iowa as well. And I think just the main reason is that they're not going to lose twice. And it was a tough battle with the number 1 team in the country. They learned a lot about what they have and the pieces on their team in that game against Gonzaga. And I just don't think that they lose at home to start Big Ten play against Purdue. I'll take Iowa and Luka Garza as well, and the experience and the depth and all of that good stuff. And for Iowa to bounce back with a big win there over Purdue. I do think it's going to be close, so I think Purdue will give them their best shot for sure. All right, San Diego State at St. Mary's. Again, Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Who you got in this good matchup?
I've got San Diego State. I think they just lost to BYU, and BYU played a phenomenal game and put some things on film that I think Randy Bennett and St. Mary's are going to try to emulate. I just don't think that they've got the athleticism to match up with San Diego State. And like I said about Iowa, their shooters are not going to be as off as they were against Gonzaga. I think that Jordan Shackle of San Diego State is not going to score 0 points twice in a row. And I think that they're the better basketball team. So I'm going to go with the San Diego State Aztecs.
Yeah, I'm going to go San Diego State as well. I had St. Mary's originally, but then I did remember that San Diego State lost to BYU. So I'm going to go with the same exact fact about Iowa that I said, is they're not going to lose twice with the talent that San Diego State has. So I'll roll with them as well. Number 22, Xavier at number 13, Creighton. It's going to be Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Who you got in this really good matchup?
I really don't have a feel on this one, because both teams have given me kind of these bad games where they eke it out at the end and they just shoot free throws better than the other team. Creighton should have lost to UConn. They were down 4 with 30 seconds, made it 2, and the point guard for UConn missed 2 free throws in a row, which was it happens in college basketball, but it's just rare. And Xavier's undefeated, but has squeaked out a ton of games. So this is a true toss-up. I'm going to go with Xavier. I think that Xavier is going to have more defensive grit, and they'll be able to score points on this Creighton team that's it's not great defensively. So I'll go with the upset. I mean, I feel good about the upset. This is a 50-50 in my eyes. Let's hit an upset. So let's go Xavier. Let's go the Musketeers.
I like that. I like that a lot. I usually try and sprinkle in one upset a segment here, but I'm going to go with Creighton in this one. I just think their 3-point perimeter shooting is going to be the difference in this one. I haven't we started talking about this Creighton team when they had a matchup. I believe it was it Texas or was it West Virginia?
They played Kansas.
That's right. That's who it was. I knew it was someone in the Big 12. But yeah, we talked about this team when we started talking about that game, and since they were like put on the map for me this year, they've just done nothing but really leave me wanting more. And I think this is a game they can really solidify themselves as where they're ranked, what the style that they play, and all that good stuff, and show that it can really have some success. And I like them shooting well at home in this one over Xavier, so I'll take Creighton and roll with. I guess it's not an upset, but I'll roll with Creighton in this one, even though they haven't really looked particularly great. All right, number 11, Rutgers is taking on number 23, Ohio State, Wednesday at 4:30 Eastern time. Who you got in this ranked matchup in the Big Ten?
I'm going with Rutgers. I think Ohio State's got a big lift with E.J. Liddell coming back prematurely with mono. I don't know how his doctor pulled that one off, but he brings a lot there. But I think Rutgers has the interior defense and the defensive identity that'll really cause issues for the Buckeyes that don't score at an incredible clip. So I'm going to go with Rutgers. I think Miles Johnson's the best defensive big in the Big Ten, and I think he'll make it life hard for Kyle Young and E.J. Liddell on the inside. So hopefully the Rutgers can pull this one out.
I'm going to go Rutgers as well. I've just been super impressed with how they've performed so far in the Big Ten. I went with them over Illinois, and that worked out well for me. So I'm going to go with Rutgers as well in this one. Just another hard-fought matchup in the Big Ten you have to gut through, and this is a big gut check moment for Rutgers coming off of that win, traveling to a ranked Big Ten school and a good team in Ohio State. And so this is just one of those games that you're going to have to gut out and win somehow, some way. It doesn't have to be super pretty, but it's just one of those games for that Rutgers team to really legitimize themselves in the Big Ten and win a hard-fought win there in Columbus. I'll take Rutgers to do just that. Number 5, Villanova, traveling to Marquette. Who you got in this one?
It's hard not to pick Villanova, so I'm going to go with Villanova. I think Marquette is one of those teams that has very high upset potential. They actually just lost to Xavier on a game-winning buzzer beater. I think that they'll give Villanova a game. I think Villanova's basketball class that we saw them play against Texas, they just have this. Once it's a good game, it's a close game. They end up pulling these games out, and they've been there and done that. They have veterans at all places. So I'm going to go with Villanova. I expect this one to be competitive, though.
Yeah, I'm going to go Nova as well. I just think under Jay Wright, they've really started to hit their stride, and they're going to be ready for this one. I know Marquette has a ton of upset potential. They're a really solid team, but I'll roll with Villanova as well in this one. Sorry, I shuffled my screen up, but I was completely lost where we were at. All right, number 1, Gonzaga versus number 16, Virginia. Who you got in this tremendous matchup in this game? 4 p.m. Eastern time for this one.
Yes, for me, this is an interesting matchup. I'm going to go with Gonzaga. I think that's just the easy pick. And Virginia is still searching for an identity. They've been on COVID and pause, but I think in this time, Virginia is going to become a far better basketball team, finding their identity. And Virginia is good defensively. So I think Gonzaga will have to play better offense than they have in past, to execute more than they have. They won't be able to run as much as they typically do. So I think this will be a lower scoring than a typical Gonzaga game. That said, they just possess too many weapons, and there's still too many answers to be searched for Virginia. So I'm going to go with Gonzaga. Lower scoring than any Gonzaga game so far this season, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Super interesting matchup here, stylistically speaking. Virginia playing that good defense and Gonzaga playing just an explosive style of offense. So I think I'll roll with the good offense as well in this one. I just don't think UVA has all the pieces ready at this moment to pull this upset against Gonzaga. I do think they're going to have a big learning curve, and they're going to really improve as a basketball team later on in the year, but I just don't think they're necessarily there yet. So I'll go with Gonzaga to remain unbeaten and the number one team in the country in this one. Kentucky on a slide, 1-5, traveling to Louisville Saturday, noon Eastern time. Who you got in this one?
This is a rivalry game, so it's certainly a different atmosphere. Louisville just got the doors beaten off of them by Wisconsin. They lost by like 45 points or 35 points, excuse me. And they were missing their point guard. I think he'll be back, Carlick Jones. I'm going to go with Louisville. I've picked against them a few times, and it has not gone well. I'm 1-2 and picking against them. But I just think that Kentucky has all the weapons in the world to pull this upset, and it shouldn't be an upset based off of their weapons. But I think Louisville's going to win because they've got two really good guards and probably a top 5 backcourt in America in Carlick Jones and David Johnson. I really like their bigs in that they're smaller, but they fight hard, and I think that that'll do enough versus a Kentucky team that's really struggling for identity. It makes me nervous. I'm wary about picking against Kentucky, though, because you just feel like they're going to turn around because they have so much talent. Any given day, they could snap back and win. And honestly, they were the better team than North Carolina in that first half. And I thought they were going to be coming back, and then you saw this freshman struggles the entire second half, and they were outscored 29-6 at one point. So I'm going to go with Louisville and hope that the Cardinals can pull it off. Go Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, I love the shout out, the little bit of home cooking there for Donovan. But no, I've picked every single Louisville game correctly. I do believe thus far this year when they've been on our docket. I picked against them over Wisconsin, and that worked out well for me. But I did pick them to win twice, and they've won for me both times. So I'm going to go with Louisville again in this one, just because I think this could be definitely the squeaker one where I'm wrong though, and I just think Kentucky's going to have a fire about them after seeing what Coach Calipari did this week with that freshman, and just showing that he's really ready to do anything that he needs to do to fire this team up and get them playing at a more consistent level. So I just think that's super scary for this Louisville team. Louisville looked flat out terrible against Wisconsin. So it's really scary for me to pick Louisville, but hey, they haven't let me down when I've picked either for them or against them. So I'll pick for them again this time and see if we can get to 4-0 and picking Louisville games. All right, number 6, Houston, traveling to UCF Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Who you got in this one?
Well, UCF actually just came off a huge win. They beat Florida State, and that Johnny Dawkins and their group's quite a good basketball team. They're 2-1 of the year. They'd also beaten Auburn. That said, I think that Kelvin Sampson and the Houston group is too good on defense. So I'm going to go with Houston. But I don't think this is one where the number 6 team in the nation fully shows up, because they've been on COVID pause for a while. They played one game back and didn't look their best, and 2 of their players are still not fully back. So they're healthy. They're negative tests that they just have some after effects, and I don't think that it'll cause them to lose this game. I just don't feel confident that they'll win by the margin that they would, in my opinion, if they were all healthy and clicking on all cylinders. And also, you're pulling some change-ups. You're pulling a me here. I've seen this document change a few times.
Yeah, I know. I have to. I don't know. I've had some changes of heart. I just think I for the first time I looked at the Kentucky game, I was like, oh, Kentucky, they're gonna win. And then I was just like, wait a second, Kentucky's 1-5. So I changed it real quick on you. But yeah, there's been 2 switches for the record. So hopefully I didn't doom myself in switching them into bad things. But luckily I've switched them to whatever you've picked. So hopefully we'll be either in the same boat, either for or against.
It usually bites me in the butt. That's why I kept Xavier. I kind of felt like Creighton. They have an 82% chance. Creighton's FBI, but the FBI lies.
Yeah, they don't know what they're talking about. But well, that being said, I'll go Houston in this as well. I just think I think coming off of COVID leave, it's going to be a struggle, like you said, and UCF coming off their big win. But I do think Houston's just more built for something like this to happen. And this game is going to be pretty handily won by Houston, in my opinion. I think you're going to see this team kind of start to legitimize themselves a little bit. We've talked about them a couple times. You're really high on them. I think they're very good as well, just defensively, offensively, and all that good stuff. So I'll take number 6 Houston in this one as well. All right, Indiana at number 18 Illinois, Saturday 4 p.m. Eastern. Who do you have in this one?
I think I got to go with Illinois. I've picked them a couple times. They've led me astray once, but I think that Indiana is still searching for an offensive identity aside from Trace Jackson Davis, and Illinois has figured out theirs. They just had some lulls in their game, and foul trouble kind of bit them in the butt against Rutgers. So I'm gonna go with Indiana. I think they also have the interior presence in Kofi Coburn that can deter some of those dominant plays that Trace Jackson Davis has had in games past. This will be a defensive matchup in my eyes. I think Indiana is really good defensively, and that'll give them a chance in this game, especially if they can hit some jumpers. But I'm going to go with Illinois. I think they've just played a few more marquee games and won a few more games. So I'll go with Illinois and Io DeSumo being the best player on the floor.
Yeah, I'm going to go Illinois as well. I think they have the pieces to make this happen. Indiana's a great team, and I'll take the Illini at home in this one. UCLA at number 25 Oregon. You got in this one, Pac-12 matchup, going to be 3 p.m. Eastern time. So it's a little bit early start there on the West Coast.
I'm going to take the road upset. I like the Bruins. I think that they play hard. They play well together. I like Tiger Campbell. And Oregon hasn't played anyone good so far this year. They are the 66% FPI favorite, but I haven't seen them play anyone. In fact, the only team that they played was supposed to be a bad Missouri team, and Missouri turned out to be pretty good and beat them handily. I just think that UCLA's played in better matchups. They've lost to San Diego State. They've lost to Ohio State, and I think that they're going to want to get off to the right foot in Pac-12 play. And playing in Oregon is always a tough task, but there are no fans. So I'm gonna go with UCLA. I'm gonna go with the Bruins, and hopefully Tiger Campbell and company lead me in the right path.
I'm gonna go Oregon. I think it's basically just the fact that they are playing at home under Dana Altman. I know they've got a lot to replace without Peyton Pritchard. They haven't really played anyone super solid so far in their year, but I'm going to go with them being able to win the opener there in Pac-12 play for Oregon. And yeah, that's just basically a name brand thing for me. I know UCLA is definitely a name brand in the Pac-12, and these are two of the better schools and for basketball wise and in the Pac-12. But I'm going to go with Oregon in this one. Just going on a hunch mainly. Number 17 North Carolina at North Carolina State Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Who you got in this one?
I think this is another one where it's a rivalry game. And if there were fans, I think I'd take the upset and take NC State. I just think that North Carolina at this point has played more marquee matchups, and they're battle tested. They've got big guys. They got 4 of them that are really good, and I think that they'll get the bigs of NC State, Mandy Bates and DJ Funderburk in trouble, foul trouble that is. So I'm going to go with North Carolina. I definitely don't love this team. I think that they got moved up 5 spots for beating a really bad Kentucky team was a poor move in the rankings. But I'm going to go with the Tar Heels, and I think Roy is disappointed in last year's season, just terrible season, and they're on a bounce back trail, and they want to open up ACC play on a better note.
Yeah, I think this is definitely a potential trap scenario though for North Carolina. I know Kentucky is definitely not the power that they have been in years past, but with that being said, it was still a good win for them to beat that young, talented Kentucky team. I think you hit the nail on the head, though. If there's fans in this arena, it's definitely a different discussion as to whether or not North Carolina State's able to pull off the upset. But I'll take North Carolina as well, traveling to NC State in this one. All right, Maryland at Purdue on Christmas Day, 2:30 Eastern time. Who you got in this one?
I'm going with Purdue. I was really impressed with their game against Ohio State. And I was unimpressed by Mark Turgeon's Terrapins against Rutgers. And I just think that Travion Williams is the best player on the floor, and they've got bigs, and Maryland does not have anyone that is a big guy that can match up one with Travion Williams and also Zach Edey, who's a 7'4" freshman. So yeah, I'm going with Purdue, and I really was tempted to pick them against Iowa, so I had to get the Boilermakers in one of these.
Yeah, I'll go Purdue as well. I just think I just think we haven't seen enough quite out of Maryland, right, to go with them in this one. And Purdue at home, we've talked about how it's so hard to go into Purdue and win games there. So fans or no fans, I'll roll with the Boilermakers in this one. All right, number 23, Ohio State traveling to Northwestern. Is there any way that Northwestern is able to pull off 2 upsets in the same week over powerhouse Big Ten schools? Saturday, 2 p.m. Eastern, just had to squeak that in there.
I think that they have a chance because Ohio State isn't a world beater, but the fact that they're aware that Northwestern had beaten Michigan State really helps Ohio State. So I'm going to go with Ohio State. I also think that Ohio State's going to lose their first game this week. And like we said, in the Big Ten, you can't really go down 0-2. And they've already lost one of the Big Ten to Purdue. So this is almost a must-win game. We talked about in the Big Ten preview, in a conference as deep and heavy scheduled as some of these programs are, that you have to win games against teams you're supposed to beat in order to win that conference or compete in it. And so I think Ohio State is going to win that game out of necessity. But I do think Northwestern's a lot better than we both thought, and they could be one of the 12 best teams. But who knows? Maybe all 14 go to the tournament. Like it's ridiculous how good they are. Shout out Nebraska again that we didn't include them in this. They play Michigan. That's another one that's interesting. But I'm gonna go with Ohio State in this one.
Yeah, I'm going to go Ohio State as well. Just exactly what you said. They need to win this game. They need to beat who, like we touched on, you have to beat who you're supposed to beat in this conference to really legitimize yourself and set yourself up for success, quite frankly. So I'll go with Ohio State as well. Pretty much a need to win game. I do agree with you here over Northwestern after a tough start to Big Ten play. All right, that brings us to our games of the week. We'll do number 9, Wisconsin, at number 12, Michigan State first. It's going to be Friday on Christmas Day at 12:30 Eastern time. Who you got winning this one? What's your score?
I don't like picking against Michigan State in the Breslin Center, but so far I think Wisconsin's a really good team. They're going to crack the top 5 at some point in my eyes. So I've got Wisconsin 67-64. Michigan State will keep it close, but I think the experience and the free throw shooting of Wisconsin is going to win this game for them. I think they'll make the free throws at the end of the game, whereas a lot of teams miss them in the free throw game. I just think that their senior leadership and knowing what role they play is going to win them this game. And Michigan State forward Joey Hauser's a little banged up, and he's absolutely essential in this game for the Spartans, and they need to be 100%. And if he's less than as one of their best players, I think that really favors the Badgers.
Yeah, I'm going to go Wisconsin as well, 74-70. I just think the continuity, the experience, and all of those things play into this one. Give me the Badgers in a close one like you touched on. It's going to be a great game there on Christmas Day. All right, number 7, West Virginia at number 3, Kansas, tomorrow at 9 p.m. Eastern time. Who you got in this one? And
wait, what was your score for that one? You said close one.
Oh, yeah, 74-70.
All righty. No, I like it. As for the Jayhawks and the Mountaineers, I'm going to go with the slight upset. I'm going to go with the West Virginia. I think that Kansas is going to be forced to play David McCormick, which means West Virginia wins that little chess and checkers battle of who's going to play small or big. And I could be wrong about that, but I think that Culver and Sheboy are going to overpower on the inside, get a lot of rebounds, and play better defense. I think that Kansas has shown that they win a lot of close games, which makes me nervous in this one. And Bill Self's a phenomenal end-of-game coach. He's called up amazing plays. He's done it twice already this year to beat Creighton on a go-ahead three and a go-ahead layup against Texas Tech. But I'm going to go with West Virginia because I think in close games, eventually your luck runs out. And so I'm going to go West Virginia with a 62-59, really low-scoring game. I'm going to go with the Mountaineers. I definitely don't feel confident about this one because I respect Bill Self so much, but I think Huggy Bear is going to pull this one out.
Huggy Bear. I love it. All right, West Virginia. I'm going to go with them as well by a score of 66-61. I just think defensively they're one of the better teams in the country. They're just uber aggressive. They're going to need to shoot well, though. That's going to be the thing that determines if they're able to have sustained success this season in my eyes. And I agree with you. Kansas has played so many tough games, so many close games. They've eked out so many wins. I eventually just think you're unable to do it at one point in time throughout the season. And I think this is going to be that matchup. The uber aggressive style of West Virginia and all of that stuff really makes a difference in this game. And I think West Virginia gets it done at Kansas, which is something I definitely would not say if there were fans in the arena for Kansas. So with that being said, those are our games that we have picked for you this week. This is going to be a tremendous week of college basketball as always. We are starting off bowl season, so we're going to have some different schedules coming out. But that being said, Leif and I will be back with you for more basketball stuff later on the week. Thursday, I believe we will do a Big 12 basketball conference preview in general for all of you. So make sure to look out for that. And do you have anything else to add before we sign off for the day, Leif?
Yeah, just have a good Christmas. Enjoy your time with your family. Watch some sports, and then in these games, I just wanted to give it a little nod. Is that we talk about the home crowds not being there, but I think I do worry about taking so many road underdogs. That's something that doesn't typically bode well, but we'll see. And this year is a unique year. But yeah, have a good Christmas. Stay safe. Watch sports and have fun.
Yep. Happy holidays, everyone. Stay safe, and we will see you all on Thursday. All right, everyone. Take care.